I'll call this meeting to order. For all those that can, please rise for the singing of our national anthem. Madam Clerk, introduction of addendum and delegation items.
There are no addendum items this evening.
Thank you. Mover and a seconder for confirmation of the agenda. Councillor Wells, Councillor Bruno. Any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. Any disclosures of interest this evening? Councillor Wells.
Item 5, planning and budget task regarding the development of charges for site alteration plan, pecuniary interest on that regard.
Okay. Seeing no others. Adoption of minutes. I need a mover and a seconder for the regular meeting of Committee of the Whole 25-19 held on October the 15th, 2019. Councillor Danch, Councillor Beauregard. Any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. Didn't know which one to pick down there. Items, determination of items requiring separate discussion. I'll start on my left. Councillor Bodner. Councillor Clayliff. Pardon? I'm good. Okay. Councillor Danch. Councillor. Councillor Bruno.
5, 6, and 7.
5, 6, and 7. Councillor Bagu?
2, 3, 4, Mr. Mayor.
2, 3. Councillor Desmarais? Councillor Wells? Thank you. Approval of items not requiring separate discussion. A mover and a seconder. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Bagu. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. No presentations. We have one delegation this evening. Janet Handy, Executive Director of the Kristen French Child Advocacy Center, Niagara, regarding information about the Kristen French Advocacy Center and what the center is looking for for the future. And that's found on page 7.
Mayor
Welcome,
Steele,
Janet.
Thank you. Mayor Steele and councillors, thank you for giving me time to bring you up to date on the Kristen French Child Advocacy Center. We are a safe place for children to disclose their abuse experiences to joint police and facts investigation teams in a child-friendly and welcoming center. We are the first fully operational child advocacy center in Ontario since 2008. Child advocacy centers represent an international model of excellence in joint investigation for children and youth who have experienced child abuse. And the model has been endorsed as a model of choice for interviewing children by the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police. Our purpose is threefold: to provide a non-threatening, child-friendly place where children and youth feel safe disclosing their abuse experience. In other words, it's not a police station, it's not a principal's office, it's not a hospital. It's their own place, and it's built just for them. When before CACs existed, a child might have to disclose that experience to up to 7 different professionals in seven different venues. And at this point, what happens is they'll come into the center, they'll do a recording of the interview, and then that recording is available for anybody who needs to see that. And that's what goes forward into the justice system. So when we do it once, instead of 7 times, we minimize the number of times that children have to repeat that experience, and therefore we reduce the trauma associated with disclosure itself. And then we believe when we fulfill that purpose that we can actually change the course of a child's life. Working together as a team in investigation, Niagara Regional Police Services, they gather evidence and determine the criminal charges, if any, are to be laid. FACTS, Child Protection, determines child protection needs and will assign special support staff to families both during and after the investigation. Family Counseling Center is our third partner, and they provide a follow-up counseling support. We actually raise funds so that FCC can see our children right away, and they're not in a waiting list, or a couple of months down the road they can be seen within a 2-week period, or that time if it's necessary. And any partner, the investigation team can bring in any medical personnel that's needed to assess children. Right now, most children who need medical assessment of a major kind would go to McMaster. But we do have a medical room available for some minor investigations that are needed. We host the investigation, we greet families, we redirect incoming calls, and we work tirelessly to bring awareness to the center, the impacts of child abuse, and to sustain the center in the Niagara region. This coordination as a whole team ensures that the developmental needs of children and youth are considered first when they are encountering the justice systems meant to support them and not increase trauma, as I say. Some of the larger CACs in the country have had enough volume to be able to do return on investment studies, both qualitative and quantitative. They found significant benefits for children and families, and that includes children being less afraid, caregivers expressing more satisfaction with the procedures and investigation, and you can imagine a caregiver who's hearing this for the first time or in this investigation for the first time being quite stressed and distressed, and part of their job is to work with the whole family. And child advocacy centers refer more children for both mental health services and preventative and injury-related medical exams. Certainly there's benefits also for the professionals and for our community. The joint investigation teams of professionals feel they better understand each other's team roles when they work in this joint way. They work together to improve case results by doing case review, and fewer children fall through the cracks. And finally, they have found in these studies that there's an estimated savings of 32%, that a CAC-coordinated investigations are more cost-effective than non-CAC run investigations. Since opening in 2008, we've seen over 3,000 children in the 10 years that we've been here. We host on average 1 investigation a business day. In 2018, we had 310 cases involving 569 children and youth managed by the CAC-located FACTS team. We have grown from hosting 50 investigations in our first year to that average of 340 interviews per year. And children come from every municipality in Niagara. In other words, there's not a municipality that whose children and youth do not experience child abuse and its impacts. Why is that so important to continue with this model? Well, we know that besides the obvious needs of a child coming into the justice system and the need to be heard on their terms and in developmentally appropriate way, We know that untreated child abuse or unreported child abuse can affect a person for a lifetime. We know now that a child who suffers abuse is 30% less likely to graduate from high school. A youth who suffers abuse is 26 times more likely to be homeless, and an adult survivor of child abuse is 2 times as likely to be arrested. Our strategic plan, we're committed to collaborative fundraising and programming, and whenever possible beyond the investigation itself. So we collaborate with a number of other agencies to achieve outreach to youth, interagency and community learning opportunities, and in joint strategies for awareness, prevention, and work together to provide viable responses to the crime of child abuse in our Niagara communities. A Trillium grant over the last 3 years gave us the opportunity to reach out to 12 to 15-year-old youth through several avenues. I'll just mention 2. Teen Connect, that is an awareness education presentation in our schools, and that was developed together with our partners. And Teen Creative, which is a 12-week program with Foster Festival, visiting artists who work with youth on self-expression and healing beyond their abuse experience. And we began a collaborative website called PCAN, Partners to End Child Abuse in Niagara. That's made up of over 14 partner agencies providing program, speaker, and service access to professionals, caregivers, and the general public. Andrea Jack, who's with me, is a board member who has spearheaded that PCAN initiative, and if you have any questions about that, she will be glad to answer those. Finally, our funding. We operate without any core government funding. The staff, volunteers, and board all work tirelessly all year round to sustain the service for Niagara's children and youth through fundraising, grant writing, as well as the generous support of our partners. The center raises 40% of its budget through fundraising alone, with 5 events, campaigns for special projects, and planned giving program to sustain the future. The Niagara region continues to be very generous in support of the center, and we would not exist without your support and the support of every municipality here. And finally, most importantly, it takes all of us to be vigilant on behalf of our children and youth. So if you know of abuse or suspect a child is being abused, please report it. You don't have to determine if it is abuse. You just need to make the call and let the professionals make a determination. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Janet. Councilors, any questions? Councilor Bonner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Janet. I had the very good fortune to be involved early on with the center when Roy Hardman, Doug French, Frank Parkhouse, many more that were involved before it was a real thing. And I just like to echo your words. It's just, there's no other way to do this in my mind. Like the trauma on the child, like you said, going through up to 7 different interviews, and this is a one-off, and it just so professional and so easy on the child. So great work you're doing, and
Thank you.
you know, I hope it continues for many years.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other questions? Councilor Demmer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Janet, thank you for coming this evening and letting us all know about this really valuable work that you're doing. Because we are here in the southern end and you're at the northern end, and transportation is always a challenge, how do children of from Port Colborne who have suffered abuse, how do they actually access your services, and what arrangements are made to get them to and from?
So children actually come in on a case that's being reviewed. So police or child welfare will be there. They may come by bus, they may come with their worker, they might come from some other way. But they don't drop into our center. So children always come through through the partners. In terms of post-investigation programming, like the arts groups and so on, we have managed to place it in different places in the region and hope to continue to do that and give a trial to that, so that we would take the program to Fort Erie. We've been in Niagara on the Lake, and I hope that next year we can come into this area as well.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Great, ladies. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. I'm just going to leave a few items here for someone for information.
I just wanted to talk quickly about
Oh,
the website.
yep.
It's okay.
Turn the mic on. Make sure the mic's on. Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Okay, just quickly about the website, I'm just passing this card along to you, and it's a quick, the website has 14 agencies on the back, and you can see who are our partners, and they also do awareness to draw people to the site. The actual site is endchildabuseNiagara.com. So that is on the card, and also an email if people need to get in touch with me and talk to us about our site and anything they think need to be added on. So if you know of an agency who would like to join us, that is also welcomed as well. It's on the website. So thank you very much for your time.
Good.
And your lovely comments, Mr. Bodner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on to the mayor's report. My mayor's report's not very long this evening. Last Friday, the provincial government announced that it had completed its governance review and no changes would be forthcoming at this time. They are leaving the decisions for better governance in the hands of local government. I can tell you that the mayors and CAOs of the Niagara region continue to work towards providing excellent services to our residents while being conscious of costs. The recent memorandum of understanding with Welland, Pelham, Wainfleet, Thorold, and Port Colborne is an example of this, and I know that you'll see future partnerships coming forward as the mayors and regional councillors meet moving along. So at the same time, the clerk will be starting the recruitment process with regards to our city governance committee, and that'll happen in November, correct? Thank you, Madam Clerk. This past week, did you participate in Taste of Port Colborne? Downtown Port Colborne Main Street BIA, and the city want to hear from you. Please complete the quick survey as your feedback will allow for improvements in the future. Visit tasteofportcolborne.ca. So hopefully you guys partaked. I know I went to several establishments and it was a lot of fun. Yeah. This coming Saturday, November the 2nd, is the Lions Club Food Drive in support of Port Care's Food Bank. Please have your non-perishable food items on your front porch by 9 a.m. for our volunteers to pick up. The food donations collected will provide the Port Care's Reach Out Center with much needed resources for clients during the winter months when the need for food is the greatest. Most needed items: canned fruit, canned fish, canned meat, canned pasta, side dishes, dry soup, peanut butter, pull tab cans, diapers sizes 4 and 5, deodorant, shampoo, and toothbrushes. Any cash or checks will be accepted by the teams of volunteers. Any check can be made payable to Port Cares. Help design our community Christmas card. Just a reminder that we are seeking your children's wintry Christmassy drawing for our annual Christmas card. We'll be accepting drawings until Friday, November the 8th. Please check out our website for details. And finally, our Remembrance Day services. The Royal Canadian Legion Branch 56 Poppy Week will run from Friday, October the 25th to Monday, November the 11th, 2019. Remembrance Day services will be held at 10:45 a.m. on Monday, November the 11th at the cenotaphs of H.H. Noel Lakeview Park and Centennial Park. Out of respect for and in honor of our veterans, your attendance would be most appreciated. And thank you, Councillor Bagu, for attending the Poppy startup in King George Park. I was in Toronto, so thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. Any questions? Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. I'm pleased that you announced about the startup again of the Committee on Electoral Matters and looking for volunteers. I was wondering if, and maybe this is more of a question for the clerk, will there be a report back to us first? Because one of the things I was concerned about is that we grab all matters, not just council composition, but boundaries. There's talk of remuneration that we should deal with again. And so I'm just wondering, before that call goes out, will we be given sort of a prospectus on what's going to be asked for in that committee?
Madam Clerk?
I can bring a report back to council with the suggested terms of reference for the committee if you'd like. But do wish to go ahead and recruit at the same time, just so, because that does take a bit of time, so everything gets done in a timely manner.
Counselor?
From my point of view, if the terms of reference aren't hard to come by, I mean, we've waited this long and it's 3 years till the next election. If we had to wait 2 or 3 weeks to get it all before us, before recruiting, it wouldn't bother me, but that's just my opinion.
Madam Clerk, anything to add?
No, it's fine, I can do that.
Yeah, we have done it twice, so we do have 2 terms of reference we can follow. So we'll let the clerk, but to go out and recruit while she does that, I don't see a problem in that. Is that kind of consensus of council? Work in conjunction with the 2? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, you won't appoint until after the terms of reference come in. That's fine. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Regional Councillor Butters, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Steele. Glad to be here. Happy to see you all. So, a little bit of information for everybody. Curbside branch collection started today and it'll run through to November 22nd. So for residents living in single-family dwellings or apartments up to 6 units, they can put out those branches. They need to be tied in bundles that do not exceed 22.7 kilograms or 50 pounds, because I just think in pounds. The maximum size around is 1.5 meters, or long, 1.5 meters, 5 feet long, and then the diameter 0.05 meters or 1.6 feet in diameter. So if you're gonna put branches out, do it that way. The bad news is we're coming on to flu season. The good news is you can get your flu shot. Various pharmacies in Port Colborne offer that. Niagara Public Health is very busy as well offering it. You can, if you're down that way and you want to have it done there, you can make an appointment. You can call 905-688-8248 and get your flu shot. It's really important to realize how dangerous the flu can be. Nobody wants to spread it or get it, so please consider getting your flu shot. I got mine today. I lived through it. The person who gave it to me was totally wonderful. So Laura, if you're listening, she was excellent. I didn't even feel it. So there's various locations and days and times that you can tap into across the region. So the other big news, I guess, is that the province decided not to impose amalgamations on the regions or municipalities. So it will be up to us to decide what happens here on in Niagara, and I'm looking forward to some discussions at the region about that. And I did manage to participate in the Taste of Port Colborne at a couple places, and it was very good. So anyway, that's all for me, and if you have any questions, happy to help.
Good, thank you, Councillor. Any questions? Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Butters. Barb, I'm dealing with a couple of people right now who have some challenges, and I'm looking at possible regional programs to help out. Certainly home rehabilitation programs with respect to seniors and mobility issues as well. And anything that you may find on a regional level that may be able to help them out. Lower income, that sort of thing, with some real difficulties in needing home improvements for the very least, and also dental work. There's one in particular with that. So if you hook up into any programs to let me know about it, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, maybe I can give you a call later and maybe give me some more specifics so I can know exactly what you're looking for.
Happy to do that. Thank
Okay,
you.
great.
Good, thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Butters. No further questions? Okay, Councillor's items. I'll start at my right tonight. Councillor Wells?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have 3 here. One is in regards to some concerns in regards to the condition of Centennial Park, and I've been working with the Parks Department in regards to get the ruts and that leveled off before our Remembrance Day celebrations there. So that's under control. There were a number of residents that had noted a number of piles of asphalt and stone at the corner of 2nd Concession and Highway 140. And there was concern there of what was going on and the stockpiling of this material. So we looked into that, and I've been working with the bylaw department on that, and it is Amherst Cranes is looking to refurbish the roadway there, and so bylaw is helping with that issue. The third thing is on Saturday, we had the Shirkston Community Center Halloween party. It was well attended. Regional Barbutters and Ron and I were judges for the costume contest, and we had a tough go at making some decisions that day, but everything turned out well and everybody had a great time.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Demery? Anything?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Chris, this would go to you. Amelia Street, the south side sidewalk. Just as the intersection comes to, I think it's Colborne Drive there that it intersects with, I saw actually someone fall off a little scooter, a disabled person falling off a scooter, because that sidewalk, it comes along and then it drops like this and then it goes again like that. It's a really difficult thing. It looks like it's a huge resurfacing project, but possibly you could look at that. It's a real danger, there's no question. And there's no other way to get off the sidewalk other than exiting that way.
Chris?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Demery. We'll have staff have a look at that first thing this week, and
Okay.
we'll see what we come up with and get back to you on some suggestions.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bagu?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one tonight, probably for our CEO/Director of Operations. And I did confirm with an email with him, but I'm getting complaints about the potholes that have been filled, or actually not potholes. The work's been done on the road, it's been patched, and it needs further repair before the season. And the phone calls, actually I had another one today, but if Mr. Lee did confirm that they're all going to be fixed by early, mid-November, all the patching is intended to finalize the task for the year. Am I correct?
Chris?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bagu. Yes, you're correct. Actually, I confirmed with staff just this afternoon that the asphalt patching contractor is due in the last 2 weeks of November.
Okay. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. Two items. One on Barrack Road and the involvement of the police on speeding in that section between Highway 58 and Elm Street. I'm just wondering if you can or are able to obtain some kind of report as to what results to date have happened there with the police keeping an eye on that. And the other one is to our clerk. Amber, I know that you're working on the renovations, first and second floor, for accessibility and the counter and all that stuff. And I got to thinking about our podium here with speakers. And I didn't know if it's not too late or if it's workable to do something here for folks in a wheelchair or a scooter that will access and still allow them to speak if you're standing or if you have a handicap.
Madam Clerk?
Through the mayor, I can look into this, and if it can't be part of this budget, I will put forward some kind of request for the budget, for an upcoming budget to be included in the same renovation.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Border? Councillor Danch? Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to CAO / Head of Operations, Chris. Can you just give us a quick update on the lighting situation? I know we've been talking about it all summer with the lights that are off, not working. I know you were doing some infrastructure. I'm getting complaints about West Street that all the lights that are still out on Charlotte Street here. Any update?
Chris?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. With specific to the lights themselves, it's an ongoing situation with some of the repairs. We actually have one pole that's missing on West Street, actually close to the corner where you live. That pole, we're trying to get it retrofitted because it's an old style pole that was put in the early 80s. We have the damaged pole, but we've been told that we can't fix it in any way, shape, or form. So we're looking at trying to substitute that for another light fixture and a different pole. The others, that's an ongoing thing with our contractors, and we'll be on those as those get reported to us. I haven't heard anything as of late that our website contact isn't working, so that's a good thing.
Okay.
So we'll continue to work on those requests and those ideas as they come forward.
Okay, Counselor?
Just so that I can let people know, thank you. Secondly, I just wanted to talk about, on Friday, I attended 2 events. One of them was Communities in Bloom. I was invited to that through the AMO, and it was a really interesting workshop held throughout the day. There were other communities there. Thorold was there, Ridgeway Crystal Beach, Fort Erie, Lincoln, different ones, talking about things that we can do, working through them to promote our community. They can help us, they can do audits, it's not about flowers, just flowers, it's about working with the whole community at large. I would like to ask that perhaps we could have Mr. Ray Hurd, who is the CIB National Director, come and speak to us. They're willing to come and talk to us about it and show us some plans. They can help us. It can actually be part of your strategic planning. It works with volunteers. It's all about making the most of your community and at the best possible prices, basically, was what it was about. So can I put that forward? I don't know, maybe also.
Yeah, Counselor, if you can work with the clerk on that and
Okay.
get a common date that'll work both
Great.
with the council schedule and his schedule.
Okay, great,
Okay.
thank you. And last but not least, Friday evening, I attended Crime Stoppers of Niagara on behalf of the mayor because he wasn't available at the time. And I just wanted to present him with a certificate of recognition that was awarded to Port Colborne as being a supporter of crime prevention and Crime Stoppers of Niagara, and also with this little gift that they sent for him. It was a very interesting evening. I learned things that I didn't even know about Crime Stoppers, and I think that it's something that we should be promoting and be a part of wholeheartedly. So on behalf of Crime Stoppers, the mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Well, it looks like it was chocolates.
Maybe.
All right. Maybe. Sure they were good. Glad you enjoyed those, Counselor. So it just says certificate of recognition awarded to City of Port Colborne for being a supporter of crime prevention and Crime Stoppers of Niagara, awarded this 25th of October 2019. Thank you, Counselor, for attending that. As I stated earlier, I was away in Toronto, so let's see what their card says. It's for everybody in the city, so. On behalf of the entire Board of Directors, I would like to express our most sincere thanks for your continued support of our organization. So, that's great. Counselor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Chris, we certainly had a high wind, high water event on Sunday. I know you shared a few pictures tonight that were kind of unbelievable at the end of our drains. And I'm doing this just to let people know what our plan is when we know one of those storms are coming. And Chris, could you speak to whether we're proactive or we just react after the fact? A lot of people that have been through this before kind of got an idea what's going on and know we're fighting Mother Nature. But some person that's just bought a home and this is their first time, and all of a sudden within an hour the water's basically surrounding their home and they leave wondering what the heck's going on. Can they be assured that we're doing everything possible?
Chris?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodner's questions. Probably the quickest way to put an understanding to all of this is I'll give you sort of a synopsis of what happened yesterday with the crews. We had on-call people check in at 8 a.m. in the morning. They checked all the lake levels. We have access to the local Coast Guard monitoring stations so they can phone in and get the actual elevations of the lake as things are occurring. We had a call out then at shortly after 11 a.m. yesterday morning, and during the peak of the storm we had up to 8 staff that had responded to that call. We were monitoring all of the drains. Before noon we had all of the gates closed and secured that needed to be, or that have gates on them, if I should. The lake levels, as you had indicated, they actually rose quite quickly. and the peak levels came at approximately 1 p.m. in the afternoon. They started to recede slowly. We still had staff on managing the gates. We started pumping at all of the facilities that have pumps just prior to noon hour, and those pumps ran until approximately 5 p.m., at which point the lake had subsided sufficiently and staff made the decision to then open the gates and let Mother Nature do its thing. And those are some of the pictures that I had shared with some of the councilors this evening, which showed the massive amount of sand that had built up in front of the gate structures along with the debris. So staff continually worked through the afternoon and into the evening, and our last staff actually left at just before 10 p.m. And that included a final patrol to make sure that there was no branches or leaves or tree trunks or anything of that nature, not only in the drains but also on the roads. So that's sort of an idea of how we react to things. And I think that, in my opinion anyway, the crews did an excellent job. They were quick in responding. They actually brought in extra pumps in one particular drain, some of our portable pumps that we have on at our disposal, and that aided in preventing the water from causing any real flood damages in that specific area. So all in all, that's sort of a synopsis of how we handle this type of a thing. Monitor the weather reports. We constantly monitor, the crew, the staffs constantly are monitoring the gauge so we can tell when the lake's starting to recede or when it's climbing, and then we can react accordingly.
Counselor?
Thank you. I think that's helpful for people to know that we're actually doing everything we possibly can. I can remember, I don't know whether, was it in the 80s when the water was actually driven back, some drains, they went backwards. The lake water came flooding in. That was, if you ever seen that, it was like one of those tidal things when it reverses. It was pretty scary. So kudos to staff who are out there looking after things. One more thing, if I could, and it's kind of a public announcement. The Sherkson Community Center, Harry alluded to the fact that we were there and Barb was there, and yeah, that was quite a, to judge who was best in certain fields, except the little guy in the cowboy outfit. That was, right off the get-go, he was going to get something when he walked in. There's no doubt about it. It was Woody from, anyways, he was great. So at the community center, they've done a very good job on making a cabinet, rather large cabinet, glass in front for anything that would relate to the Sherkson School. And they're starting to fill it up. They have tons of pictures, but they don't have any real memorabilia like a, for athletic day, maybe a medallion or a old T-shirt that somebody had from the school. Something other than photos. They got lots of photos. So I'm just asking that if anybody out there knows somebody that went to that school and may have something kicking around that they might like to donate or loan to the center so that they can put it on display, that'd be great.
Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Counselor Clayla.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I actually want to respond to the yesterday's storm, and I have two kudos to give. This is the first time since we've moved here that the electricity stayed on, and I give kudos to Niagara Power and Ontario Hydro. Thank you very much. It was wonderful. And the second kudos is to our marina. We have a boat at the marina, and I know yesterday was kind of hairy. We were up there, and everybody was there. The water was up over. It looked like our boats were floating when they were all up on their stanchions. And Chris, Mark, people were just great and helping each other and making sure things were safe. And there were a couple situations where boats were really kind of being tossed about. So I know I can understand with the drains how you must have felt, because I know, but everything was great. They were there. They took care of it all. So thank you again for everything.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Wells.
Thank you, Your Worship. This through you to Chris. Chris, I went down Weaver Road on Sunday and saw the guys there that were doing the work, and they had an extra pump there. I didn't know we had those types of pumps. Do we have one, or do we have more of those types of pumps?
Chris?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells. That's actually a new one that we've purchased in the last 2 years. We had 2 older ones that we had to retire that were from the 50s. So this one is much newer, much more efficient, and it can prime itself a lot quicker. So we have just the one currently.
Counselor?
Thank you.
Okay. Staff responses. Any staff with any responses? Chris, anything?
I see.
Okay, thank you. All right, consideration of items requiring separate discussion. Item number 2, Counselor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Engineering and Operations Department Engineering Division Report 2019-142, subject Oil Mill Creek Municipal Drain, appointment of engineer.
Thank you, Counselor Seconder. Counselor Bodnar. Counselor Bagu.
Thank you again, thank you once again, Mr. Mayor. I'm not against the proposal whatsoever, Mr. Mayor, but I do have a concern that there is no estimate of the cost of the engineering study, and also no estimate of time frame for the engineering study. That's actually on all 3. That's the only reason why I brought it up. I'd just like an estimate, sort of an estimate on the cost and the time frame, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Lee, do you want to give a description of how this works?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bagu. The real issue with the drainage scenario is to get engineers that are qualified and capable and willing to do the job. So we've been able to find a couple of them as of recent. Mr. Whittier, Mr. Marsh, and then we also have one other one by the that's doing the skeleton drain as well. That being said, is that it's based on, we set an agenda for delivery time, so we set time frames ahead of time before we hire these individuals through the direction of council. And in doing so, we try to keep them as close to that time frame as possible. I know some of you have had experiences with this in the past, specifically with Councillor Wells and with Councillor Bodnar, where some of these drains have gone on for too long. So what we've done is we've changed the format, and we appoint the engineer now quickly and do it on a per diem rate based on the number of hours that he gives us to estimates that the job is going to be, and then we charge that back to the drain and the watershed just as in every other drain. So it's part of the actual drain costs in the overall picture, and those get added on after the actual works get done. So in the selection of these, a number of the engineers, they refuse to give us a fixed cost because there are some, as you can imagine, there are overruns with tribunals and courts of revisions and everything else that's involved. So we set out in the format specific number of public information centers that we have to include within this process, and then they charge us on a per diem rate based on that.
Counselor?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you. Any other questions? Counselor Bodnar?
Thank you very much. Just to the drain. Chris, can you tell us that this isn't anything different than we've done for years, the way of getting an engineer anyways, right?
Chris?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar. That's correct. We haven't done an estimate scenario for probably 20 some odd years. And one of those that most recently is the one who's just out now, which is the Young Hoff-Wagner watershed, where we had an engineer bring us an estimate in, and it went over a period of 20 years, and there's no way that the estimates are anywhere near what the actual engineering costs are 20 years later because of the extra time. That particular drain had 3 separate tribunal hearings, which were extra costs over and above. So this is the methodology that we've been using now for probably the last 7 or 8 years.
Okay. One more on the drains. You'll see the number of drains that are coming before us. 3 tonight, 2 in the past little while, more to come, I'm sure. This is a big deal. For a lot of reasons, I haven't got to this stage. But I think now that people in the watersheds are going to see a big improvement. It won't help with a storm like we had yesterday, because some people think that it will, but it really won't. Anyways, it's kudos to staff bringing this forward, getting at these these drains, and for a number of reasons, they've been held up, but it's good to see that we're going to be working on them sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? All those in favor? That's carried. Item 3, Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I have to read the other two, even though I got the answer already for all three.
Well, if you want to move them in block, you can move the next two unless somebody has specific questions.
I would like to move them in block.
That's fine. You can move item 3 and 4 then.
So read them both?
Yep.
Number 3, Engineering and Operations Department, Engineering Division, Report 2019-143. Subject, Point Avenue Municipal Drain, Appointment of Engineer. Item number 4, Engineering and Operations Department, Engineering Division, Report 2019-156. Subject, Bitterman Municipal Drain, Appointment of Engineer.
Okay, I got a seconder for those two. Councillor Wells. Somebody have any specific questions to either one of those? We do have a comment though. Staff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the rest of councillor. Specifically with relation to the Point Avenue drain and both the Biederman, should be noted that in the case of the Biederman, the City of Port Colborne is the initiator on this works, and it also has drainage within the township of Wainfleet. And inversely so, the Point Avenue drain is being initiated by Port Colborne and its staff, and that is in conjunction with the town of Fort Erie. So we are the lead on both of those to finalize these projects and bring them through.
Good. Thank you. Councillor?
Just a quick question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Chris. So is that why the difference in the engineers, the first two are through Marsh Engineering and the third one's a different engineer?
Chris?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor If no, the reasoning is we're trying to spread the workload around so they can meet our timeframes.
Okay.
We don't want to overload one engineer with too many reports because he won't be able to deliver on the goals we're setting out for
Great,
him.
thank you.
Councillor?
Mr. Mayor, to Chris. Chris, City of Port Colborne's been the initiator on some of these when it's dealt with another municipality. Is that because that we want to get it done? I know for years the holdup has been some other municipalities. So is the thought process now, well, it's going to piss off another municipality. That's the way it is. We need to move water. Sorry. But anyways, your comments on that? Thanks.
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodner. What staff has decided to do was to take the challenge on and handle it within house and so-called lead the charge, if we may.
Councillor, I was approached by one of the mayors to take the lead, and after talking to staff, I said no. So that's fine. But as council said, it's great to see these moving forward, as well as the one that 20 years ago, when I served on council with Councillor Bruno, Councillor Bodner at the time, and it's finally come. But the issue isn't really getting the work done, it's these tribunals and the outdated Drainage Act. So we'll be speaking with the province with regards to that. I've talked to a number of mayors, and we want to move forward to bring it into modern times, at least up past 1900. So, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that 20 years for one specific piece of property, probably one of the smallest on that shed, had held that up. I mean, this was ridiculous. So, thank you, and seeing no more questions, all in favor of those two items? That's carried. Item 5, Councillor Bruno for the conflict.
Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. Planning and Development Department Report 2019-155, subject planning budget tasks.
Seconder for that, Councillor Beauregard. Councillor Bruno, any questions or just the conflict?
Question, actually. I'm supportive of this. As you know, in some departments we are either understaffed or we have an overload of work and it's not been getting done. I'm pushing for using either a consultant or a new hire in one case. What I question about this is we don't let process trump production or getting this work done. So I think my question, although it's a planning report, is more on the dollar side, and so perhaps that's for Brenda. This is to be allocated for the 2020 budget. It says included in the 2020 budget process. Does that mean on the issue that Mr. Aquilina has brought forward, does he need to wait until the 2020 budget is fully passed? Or is he able to access part or all of these funds? Because I'd rather not wait another 3 or 4 months by the time all of that runs through the system and is passed and allocated. So I don't know if you could tell me by passing it tonight if we can go ahead with projects.
Staff?
Through the mayor to Councillor Bruno, I would recommend then that if we want to get this done quicker, we could possibly look for a reserve to pull the money from. I just don't know which reserves I would suggest right now, but we could bring that back to next council with a reserve that we would pull this from so we can get done right away.
Thank you. So you too, Mr. Aquilina. There's a process of acquiring, writing either an RFP or terms of reference for some of those studies and all of that. Would that be helpful if the money was brought forward so you wouldn't have to wait till post-budget?
Dan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruno, what I had put in the recommendation, I know council has done it in the past, council gives the approval now, and then knowing that the approval is bringing forward in the the following budget year. Council approves things now, and you know that approval is given, and then when staff brings their report for the entire budget, that money is already approved. But if Mrs. Garrett wants to find the reserve, I'm fine with that. That was my understanding or goal, is if council goes ahead and it gives the approval for this, it's something that will then be brought forward when the budget is brought forward to council.
But you'll have the money now to start. If you
Yes.
bring forward the director's concept or idea.
Yes.
Yep.
Could be that way, the reserve, or the fact council's given their pre-budget approval tonight.
Okay.
If council's comfortable with doing that.
So Madam Clerk, do you need that motion this evening, or the director will bring it to the next meeting? Which would you prefer?
You can amend the motion for it to come out of a reserve at the director's discretion if you'd like.
Okay, I'd like to put forward that motion to look at reserve accounts so that we can fund getting on with consultant studies on the, particularly the 2 items that you've mentioned on affordable housing, and I believe the other one was the fill bylaw, wasn't it?
Yes, Dan?
Mr. Mayor, just an update regarding the fill bylaw. Reading the report that I had given the manager of bylaw services the direction, following council's direction, to have something by the end of the year. Right now, staff has it in draft form. I'm not sure what the comfort level is of council to move forward, letting staff internally do the bylaw for fill, or if council wants to go ahead and have an outside firm write it.
Counselor?
I guess I would look to you for the expediency and quality of the research into that. I was more interested in the 10,000 foot level, getting the money to flow so that if you need it ahead of time, you can do that, not as much to the specifics. So I don't know if you or other councillors may have a suggestion on the fill bylaw.
Dan?
Through Mr. Mayor to council and Councilor Bruno, I know right now the draft is based on other municipalities' drafts that are following the updated Ministry of Environment information and guidelines. So the only thing is, though, the bylaw, it does not have any public process. If an engineer, or sorry, if a consultant is doing it, he may or she may partake in any sort of public consultation to actually do that and bring it forward to council. That is the only difference. You can have like a bylaw that's been drafted in the past that would be an up-to-date bylaw, because the bylaw that council has right now is a 2010 bylaw. It's already in draft form. So that could be a possible savings of $10,000.
Counselor?
As I said, on that particular one, I don't have a preference. I'd like to see the money flow to get it done. If you want to pin me down for an answer, let's get it done. I would prefer that you go ahead with that route and bring in the consultant. But I see Councillor Bodner has his hand up, and others might want to comment to that too.
So in essence, we're dealing with an amendment first. So before we discuss the action, it's to go to reserves. The seconder of that was Councillor Borgard. Are you all right to go to the reserves? Put that as an amendment? Yes. Okay, so I have a seconder for that. So basically, let's talk about the amendment first, as where the money is coming from, which is, as Garrett said, with regards to reserves. Any questions on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Oh, that's carried. Now to the main motion as amended, Councillor Bodner.
Is this to the fact whether we'd get a consultant or do it in-house? Is
Correct.
that
You
part
can,
of it?
you can
Yeah.
put that as part of our direction, yes.
Well, okay, so Dan alluded to the fact that we're modeling our bylaw on a number of municipalities that have just done a bylaw in the last, 2 or 3 years? It's not like a really old bylaw. Can you confirm that?
Dan?
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodner, the bylaws that have been drafted have been more recent than 2 years.
Yes.
I wouldn't go back that far.
Okay.
I would say in the past year.
Okay. So this is a concern by municipalities all over Ontario. So I'm comfortable with having staff work those bylaws that the other municipalities have come up with good ideas. I think our staff will include everything that's in there or everything that's relevant for us. I'll ask one question. Dan, you alluded to the fact that if a consultant did it, there could be public meetings. Could we not just have a public meeting without spending 10 grand to get a consultant in? Just incorporate some of that?
Dan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodner, yes, we can do that. I would like to have an open house first, because there may be
Yes.
comments
Yes.
and
Yes.
discussions before the report would be brought forward to council for
Right.
consideration. So that can be dealt with and done.
Yep. Mr. Mayor, I think, in order to save some money and get the same results, I think Dan's suggestion that we do what a consultant would do and, and incorporate all the suggestions that would be in there. So that'd be my amendment to it. And can I just ask Dan one more question on that too?
Do you want to deal with the amendment first, or is it is it with regards to the amendment?
No.
Okay, let's do the amendment first. So, Councillor Bodner is asking for an amendment to ask staff to hold the open house. Councillor Borgard, do you want to second that? Yeah. Okay, any questions to that? All in favor? That's carried. So now we have 2 amendments to the motion. Councillor Bodner.
Thank you. Through you to Dan. Dan, are we in any jeopardy of somebody sneaking in before we get the bylaw passed and doing something bad that we're trying to stop? How do we prevent something? What, tomorrow somebody decides to fill up a field with unknown stuff? Or is this bylaw, the bylaw we have, is it going to deal with it while we get this new one underway? Or are we in some kind of a jeopardy in this situation?
Dan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodner, right now you have the 2010 bylaw, right? That one there, depending on what the actual application is for, the delegation of that is given to the director, that's myself. If there are any complaints that we received, and I know that Councillor Wells, he mentioned that tonight, we've had complaints that have been received and that have been investigated. It would be the same thing pending the completion of a new bylaw. If someone does something that is not in conformance with the 2010 bylaw, that would be a bylaw matter. That's not to say that someone is going to do something or someone is not going to do something. I don't know.
Okay, Counselor? Yeah. Okay, any further questions? So everybody understands the two amendments, and we're noting Counselor Wells' conflict. All those in favor? That's carried. Item 6, Counselor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Planning Development Department Report 2019-146, subject background study and development charges bylaw update.
Seconder for that, Counselor Demaray. Counselor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. After we had the Watson report presented here at Council, knowing that it was going to come back and being representative on the Economic Development Advisory Group along with Councillor Wells, thought it was prudent to bring that back for just what our committee was designed for, and that is to maybe have some inquiry at our level, some circulation of ideas, some checking with developers in this case. So last Tuesday, we re-met as a group, knowing that this item was coming up on Sunday, or on today, Monday. In the interim, I had talked to, as the chair of the subcommittee on housing development, a few people in the real estate and development industry. Our subcommittee really hasn't yet gotten off the ground, looking for a bigger developer to come on board for our subcommittee meetings, but was able to speak with Todd Schultz, Kate Osterhan-Lumden is a realtor and also on the committee, Keith Cumming, a developer from Welland, Michael Smith, and unfortunately the one large developer that we want on the committee was unavailable. On Tuesday, we met with the entire committee, composed of Dave Semley, Councillor Wells, Larry Fontaine, Len Stolk, Betty Conk, Marilyn Barton, Andrea Boiter, myself. Absent was David Reels and Kate Osterhan-Lumsden. Also on that committee is the EDO, CAO, and of course the executive assistant. Unfortunately, they were absent. We took about an hour and 45 minutes, and we went through essentially the proposal that Dan had shared with us that you see on the agenda tonight, this particular item now. In short, the proposal was basically surrounding bringing development charges back over a 5-year period to 100%. And so as a group, we debated each category and sent that back to Dan and received his comments. I'm going to read out that perhaps as a motion, or perhaps Mr. Aquilina should speak first. Essentially, Dan, correct me if I'm not paraphrasing you correctly, on all 5 recommendations that the EDAC committee put forward, Dan essentially had a particular question that bled through all 5, and that is, and we knew that as a committee, and that is, for example, infill housing or multiple units of residential, including condominiums. You need to have a definition surrounding that, and we as a committee felt that that was best left to the planning department to put that definition forward. So that kind of bled through 3 of the 5. The other one was on multi-unit residential or sort of subdivision new development, and Dan was questioning whether that was for existing subdivisions or new subdivisions, because we had not mentioned either. In going back to the committee, we were pushing for development as soon as possible, so we left it as new and existing subdivisions. And under the commercial and industrial section, which is going to be number 4, we did not add institutional, which is in our development charges bylaw. We had no trouble adding institution with the same parameters. We did not deal with affordable housing because we felt as a group that we weren't really prepared to do so, and the definition of affordable housing as well, we knew that we were going to be doing an affordable housing strategy. And so while it's not in the recommendation, I don't know if Mr. Aquilina could speak to if the category affordable housing is not mentioned tonight in the proposal, in terms of DC charges, either now or phased in, is that something that can be done later when we have the strategy? Or is it better to do this evening so it's all in one document? I think the feeling around the table was basically to have that at 0 for the whole 5 years.
Dan?
Yep, through Mr. Mayor to all of council, it is really the pleasure of council, as what I put in place back to the committee. There are certain things that can be done, they just need to be defined. We have affordable housing that we know is a necessity. If council wants to move forward with actually having affordable housing included, it's just a matter of picking what the bylaw definition would be and have that brought forward to council for consideration, or vice versa. Council could wait until the affordable housing strategy is done. Maybe that strategy would recommend a community improvement plan that deals with affordable housing. It's really what council's appetite is. Do they want to wait until that study is done? Have the public engaged? Or does council want to make the move and decision tonight?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure whether, or the clerk would want me to bring forward the ones that the EDAC committee dealt with, or open up the main motion for debate now, or Mr. Aquilina, if you had any statements to make.
Well, maybe to get an answer from Dan as far as the affordable housing portion, because once we pass this, once you bring it back and it's passed, it goes for 5 years. It's pretty difficult to reopen. However, if you leave the affordable housing out of it, is it easier for this council to add it back in when we've got the information we want?
Mr. Mayor, once council passes the bylaw, it's just a matter of bringing back a report and direction from council to make an amendment to the development charges bylaw. So if council wants to do something and have something considered, council has that under their options.
So using affordable housing, and I think we want to go out and get the information, I would assume, that we want to make sure that what we put in there is exactly what this council wants, and our consultation with our public and our developers, that would be the time to make the amendment to add that, I would believe, correct?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Demery on that point?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, if you would remember when I put that motion forward about the housing strategy motion forward, the very first order of business was to define affordable housing as it pertains to Port Colborne and its peoples, which is, it's quite different than it would be pretty much anywhere else in Niagara. And we know that affordable housing has about 15 definitions, so you can't use the words. You have to have that definition. It's absolutely important to do that. And to move forward with development charges in any way, shape, or form for affordable housing without the definition is just not possible. So yeah.
Anything else to add before we have Gary bring this up?
No, Mr. Mayor, it's just what Councillor Demery has said. It was the same thing that I was mentioning in my report. Have the affordable housing strategy done, have that defined for Port Colborne, and then bring that forward for consideration of a bylaw change.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dan. So, Councillor Bruno, do you want to bring, because in essence you're going to want to bring up item 7, but we can bring that up as information only. If you want to move the, or what we've got written here from the clerk's office, then we can move forward and debate these.
I'm just wondering to the clerk if on item 4 in that, can I add the word institutional, even though that's not in the current one, but Dan had recommended it in his response. So commercial and industrial should be commercial, industrial, and institutional. Is that fine?
Yep, I will add it. You can make any amendments you'd like to this document.
Okay. I'd be happy, Mr. Mayor, to answer any questions as to why we might have done any of these in a particular fashion after I read this out. And again, it was basically with consultation from developers, real estate agents, in and wanting to invest in the community and the committee. So the motion reads that council receives Planning and Development Department Report 2019-146, Background Study and Development Charges Bylaw Update for information. The council approves the development charge implementations as follows. Infill housing, deferral of all development charges for 5 years. Multiple unit residential, including condominium, no development charges for the first 3 years. Year 4 at 50% of full rate. Year 5 up to the full 100%. Subdivision, new development, existing development, would be another amendment, the existing. Basically, we've concurred with Mr. Aquilina's report, which was 20% of development charges in first year, goes to 40% second year, 60 in the third, 80 in the fourth, and 100% in the fifth. Item 4, commercial, industrial, and institutional. No development charges for the first 3 years. Year 4, 50%. Year 5, 100%. And 5, brownfield development, deferral of all development charges for 5 years. That the updated development charges bylaw be brought forward for approval at council, and that staff be directed to prepare the notice of passing in accordance with the Development Charges Act.
Okay, seconder for that? Councillor Desmarais? Questions to the, so it's an amendment. Questions to the amendment? No? Okay. Seeing no questions? Okay, so everybody's clear on this then? This is how we'll move forward. Dan, obviously, between what you discussed with Councillor Bruno with regards to all the definitions, you'll have that moving forward. And then we all know the affordable housing will come by later for us to do an amendment at that time. Okay? So this will be coming back to the next meeting or the end of November?
Mr. Mayor, my intention is to have this to council at the upcoming council meeting.
Okay.
The bylaw is written, it's just a matter of putting in the new definitions and making sure all the items that were mentioned tonight are included. So I see no issue with that not coming back to council at the next meeting.
Great, thank you, Dan. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Item 7, Councillor Bruno.
Memorandum from the Economic Development Advisory Committee, redevelopment charges.
Okay, for information purposes. Seconder for that, Councillor Desmarais. Any? Oh, I did. I do apologize. You're right. I apologize. Yes, we have to vote on the motion as amended. You have a question?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. On item number 7, it says that the city impose a vacancy tax on the land that is approved for development, which remains undeveloped for a period. To Councilor Bruno, do we want to include that in your amendment? Did you purposely not mention that? I just want to.
No, it was not on purpose. I didn't have it here on the printed out page.
Your microphone?
Grammatical error.
Microphone?
Sorry. No, there was a, we would support that.
Okay.
Dan, you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the comment I have is that the development charges deal with actual development. This is something entirely different that, without putting Mrs. Garrett on the spot, should be a separate report for council's consideration.
Sounds good.
Okay. So staff will bring that forward separately then? Okay, Councillor? Okay, great. So back to item 6 before we move to item 7. Vote on the motion as amended. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So item 7 is on the floor now with Councillor Bruno, Councillor Desmarais. Any questions to receiving this? All in favor? That's carried. That's into that. Perfect. Any notices of motion? Move to adjourn. Councillor Beauregard, Councillor Danch. All in favor? That's carried. I'll call this portion of the meeting to order. Any introduction of addendum items, Madam Clerk?
There are none this evening.
Confirmation of the agenda, mover and seconder. Councillor Bagu, Councillor Wells. All those in favor? That's carried. Disclosures of interest. Item 5, Councillor Wells. Thank you. Adoption of minutes. We have one set of minutes. The regular meeting of council 30-19 held on October the 15th, 2019. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Bodnar, Councillor Clayliff. All in favor? That's carried. One item determining for separate discussion is item 5 for Councillor Wells' conflict. Can I have a mover and a seconder to bring that, or a mover to bring that forward? Councillor Desmarais. We'll get to that. Any other items to be brought forward? All those not brought forward, a mover and a seconder. Councillor Beauregard, Councillor Bodnar. Questions? All in favor? That's carried. We have one item, item 5, Councillor Desmarais.
Planning and Development Department Report 2019-146, subject background study and development charges bylaw update.
No, item 5.
Red item 6.
That's
There we
okay.
go. Planning and Development Department Report number 2019-155, subject planning budget tasks.
I got a seconder for that. Councillor Beauregard, again for Councillor Wells' conflict. Any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. There are no proclamations this evening. We have 2 sets of minutes. Minutes of the Port Colborne Public Library Board meeting of August the 13th, 2019. Minutes of the Port Colborne Historical and Marine Museum Board of Management meeting of September 24th, 2019. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Bruno, Councillor Wells. Any questions to either of those? All those in favor? That's carried. Consideration of bylaws, Madam Clerk.
Considering bylaws 6727-91-19 through to 6730-94-19. Note that 6731-95-19 has been removed and will be updated at a further meeting. And I just ask that 6732-96-19 be held off till the end of this meeting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So for the 4 bylaws, a mover and a seconder. Councillor Bruno, Councillor Clayliff. Questions to any of those? All those in favor? That's carried. So we will now be entering an in-camera meeting to ensure transparency. I want to state that one of the items we will be discussing in closed session is the appointment of an interim CAO. I want to let you all know this as we may be passing a motion tonight when we rise from closed session and come back to open session. So if anybody wants to stick around in the gallery, they can. So I need a motion to go into closed session. Councillor Wells, Councillor Desmarais, any questions? All those in favor? The council do now proceed into closed session in order to address the following matters. Minutes of the closed session portion of the following council meeting, September 23rd, 2019. B, verbal report from Natalia Reeves, Human Resources Coordinator, on behalf of Scott Louis, Chief Administrative Officer, concerning a human resources matter pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. C, verbal report from Natalia Reeves, Human Resources Coordinator, concerning a human resources matter pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. D, memorandum from Natalia Reeves, Human Resources Coordinator, dated October the 28th, 2019, concerning the performance appraisal of the Chief Administrative Officer pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. We now will move into closed session. In Committee Room 3.
No.